I'm going to paint the picture for you guys really quickly about what happened Saturday night. We headed into Saturday night with Emanuel Navarrete, a guy whom I deem as a top 20 pound-for-pound type of guy, a guy that's in my tier 7 currently of boxers overall in the pound-for-pound tiers. Emanuel Navarrete was an overwhelming favorite to beat Charly Suarez, and rightfully so. And when we head into this game plan of what was the possible opportunity, what's the possible path for Charly Suarez to defeat Emanuel Navarrete, my answer to that was he's going to have to get a KO to some extent. That was his only path. He was not going to outbox Emanuel Navarrete. Well, let's get into the fight now. We go through the fight up until the point where the very, very controversial action occurs, and let me break that portion down for you. Emanuel Navarrete is doing his thing overall. I see the debate, and I understand why some people have had Charly Suarez winning or up in that round at the time of the stoppage. Personally, I do believe Emanuel Navarrete was up on my scorecards. I see the path that people were saying why they think Charly Suarez should have been up. I personally had Emanuel Navarrete up at that point in time. And this was a situation where Charly Suarez was only going to beat Emanuel Navarrete if it was via some form of a KO. Well, things get very interesting then. Because as we're going through this situation, all of a sudden, a massive punch is landed on Emanuel Navarrete by Charly Suarez. A punch that ends up resulting in a devastating cut. A brutal cut, to be honest. And they end up going through the end of that round. Obviously, they go through the 7th round and so on and so forth. And then eventually, we get to the point where the doctor has to look at Emanuel Navarrete and they call it a fight. At that moment in time, there was a lot of controversy. And before I go off on what happened that night, let me make sure I make this very, very clear. I understand that the position that the judges were in at that moment in time was very, very difficult. Not until about 4 or 5 minutes after they were walking back to the locker room did we get that one angle that 100% clarified that was a legal punch that ended up resulting what should have been a KO for Charly Suarez. So I'm not going to sit here and say this was such a point-blank obvious call that it had to be made, and I don't know how it's possible the judges missed it. I saw it from that one angle, and I thought, okay, it was a punch, but then the confirmation, clear-cut evidence was given about 5 minutes afterwards. That being said, that does not change the fact that how the situation was handled was poor. And that at the end of the day, this was a very, very odd situation. You don't really go to the monitor, and it's not this long until we have a decision that often in fights and boxing. But we go into the situation, and because of the fact that they deemed it an accidental headbutt, because they could not have clear-cut evidence proof that this was landed by a punch, ends up resulting in a devastating loss as of the moment for Charly Suarez. And this is unfortunate. Because for those of you that do not know Charly Suarez, he is older in age. This is not a young buck that's going to be having many, many more opportunities. Likely this is his final big shot at a world championship. And as I said, Charly Suarez is not the type of guy that was going to probably outbox Emanuel Navarrete through 12 rounds and win on points. It just wasn't going to happen. His route to victory was doing what you can only do in combat sports, where even if you are down by a bunch, and essentially if we're going to use football or basketball terms, you're being blown out, if that's occurring to you in combat sports, it's the only sport where 1 second, literally 1 split second, can alter and change that entire dynamic. You can erase if you want to use basketball terms, a 30-point lead off of one punch and end that within a victory in 1 second. Only sport you can do that in. And Charly Suarez did exactly that. And yet we come to a situation now for Charly Suarez where at his age, he landed the perfect punch. What ends up resulting in that? A loss for him to Emanuel Navarrete. In what would have been not only Charly Suarez's biggest win of his career, a win that would have made him a world champion, he would have had the biggest upset of the entire year. That could obviously have changed ultimately, but at this point in the year, that would have been the biggest upset in boxing this year. But that storyline that I just said, that did happen, but in technicality, in reality, according to the record books, did not happen. Charly Suarez was robbed of a lifetime achievement that he worked his whole life for, simply because of the situation that unfolded here. And as I said, yes, I understand from the judge's standpoint, that one specific angle, when the zoomed in, I think whatever the camera angle was, that came in about 5 minutes after the ruling of the decision was given, did not come out on time yet. But it just makes you wonder, could they have waited more time? And now you're in a situation where not only does that whole true reality that should have happened situation not occur for Charly Suarez, but now we're in a situation where as of the moment, Charly Suarez has a loss on his record. It is one of the worst swing of events you could possibly fathom or imagine. And yet that's the position that Charly Suarez is placed in right now. It is a horrible situation he's got placed in. And at this point in time, there's only so many things that can be done, but that so many things that can be done must be done. And what am I referring to in that? Now, the California State Athletic Commission has said that they expect or overturn the result to a no contest. That should be absolutely. The fact that Charly Suarez not only doesn't have had that entire situation taken away from him, but he also has a loss added to his loss column is sad. So must be added to a no contest. And on top of that, let me make this very, very clear right now. There is no other route that needs to be taken right now other than Charly Suarez and Emanuel Navarrete rematching. And it makes perfect sense too. Not only does it have to happen, not only is it right, not only is it what's supposed to happen, but from a financial standpoint, that's a massive fight to now make. Everybody knows that it's a promoter's dream when controversy is involved. Whether that be an individual going on a Ryan Garcia run from what he did last year, or that be a controversial thing that occurs in a fight to make it a much bigger situation. We look at what's going to happen because of the Tank Davis situation. We look at something over in the UK, the Jamie TKV and David Adelaide situation. What controversy involved in boxing is a promoter's dream. This is the definition of controversy, and that rematch would be massive. Both obviously with Tom Brake, everything should be able to be situated. If Emanuel Navarrete does not rightfully give Charly Suarez the rematch, that is a massive problem, and people will lose a lot of respect for him. In fact, let me go even a step further. I think the way that he's reacting now, and I get it, you know that you were winning on the scorecards. You can say that. But you got caught. You lost that fight because that should have been a TKO. Sorry, my apologies on that. That should have been a TKO. And the fact that Emanuel Navarrete wants to keep coming out and saying, oh, I don't know. I think it was a headbutt. It was a headbutt. No, it was not a headbutt. The punch that drew the blood, that caused the cut, that drew the blood, that was a punch. A very powerful punch. An impressive punch, but it was a punch. And I'm tired of going around in circles for Emanuel Navarrete trying to say that this was a headbutt. Listen, we've all seen the evidence. We've all seen the video. This was not no headbutt. That was a punch. And in return, Emanuel Navarrete needs to do the right thing and give Charly Suarez his rematch. He's rightfully earned that. He deserves that. And we need to see a rematch between those two immediately. Now, I get obviously he's going to be a cut. He's going to have to heal up from, so on and so forth. But the next time Navarrete steps in the ring, it better be against Charly Suarez. No ifs, ands, or buts. I don't even want to list any other opportunity for any other person. I said, yes, the Kakase fight versus Navarrete would be cool. No, that can happen later on. Emanuel Navarrete has one sole responsibility and job to handle right now. That is to go and defeat and rematch Charly Suarez. That should be the only thing on his mind. It doesn't matter how good you're performing in that fight. Yes, you're doing great. Boxing is one sport where a massive lead can be erased in a second. And that's what happened on Saturday night. And it's only right to give Charly Suarez his rematch.